Hey everybody, how's it going today? Thanks for joining me. Sorry about the last minute if you didn't get an announcement. I did sign up this morning to do this, but sometimes in other words, I posted I was going live this morning, and sometimes it takes a little while to kind of get to the system. Usually trying to do now every other Wednesday, whatever that means. Sometimes I just get kind of, what's the word? I don't want to just go on and talk about nothing, if that makes sense. So I usually want to have something interesting to talk about, if that's imaginable. And so some months, I'm like, or some days, I don't know what to talk about. So I'm just adjusting some levels. Everything sound good? Like I said, a little bit of a warning on the, okay, everything's playing good. Okay, great. Okay, so the question right there, great song intro again. What song, which album? That's my first record. It's called I'm Tired. That song is called Do You Remember? And if you go on Spotify and Apple Music, unfortunately, there's two Jeff McErlanes. There's two Jeff McErlane sites. There's the one that was a record that I did with Robin, and that's going to show up as something different. And so if you just type in my name, two of them will come up. One will have my first record. The other one will have the record that I did with Robin, because I was out on his label, and that was not set up properly, and blah, 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 blah. Had nothing to do with me. Things I got to try to fix, but sometimes it's a real pain in the butt to fix. You know what I mean? Going back and changing stuff and contacting all the services. And all right, blah de blah. All right, so today I have Pentatonic Connections half off on sale for 50%. And there you go. Thanks to BV for being here as well today. Really appreciate it. And thank you for everybody for making me getting me to 50,000 views or 50,000 subscribers. So interestingly, as a lot of people say now, I have more people who watch my videos are not subscribers, if that makes sense, right? So if you have not subscribed, please do so. People say it's not a big a deal as it used to be, but it definitely helps people to get notifications on my channel. So, all right. So today I want to talk about something kind of fun, like what some things to practice that may not be the most obvious things to work on. Things that I found help me get better, and not like, so you pick up the guitar and think, what am I going to practice today? Okay, I got scales. I should practice this. I should practice songs. But these few ideas, just going to give you 5 right here. 5 practice ideas. And some of these things I've talked about before. So let's just go through the first one. Practice scales over backing track. Now, this is one that a lot of people don't do, and I didn't do for a really, really long time because I just didn't think about it, So if I have a blues, let's say we got this, I've used this slow blues track. Now, I've updated all of my software and everything like that, so I'm going to have to mute my microphone because the new OBS is picking up some stuff. So I've ordered a foot switch to turn off my microphone, so you just have to give me a second to turn off my microphone, because if I play guitar with the background track, the microphone's picking it up. And all right, so I just have to remember to turn that back on, that's all. So what I'm thinking about doing when I'm playing that backing track, I'll play along with it. You might get a little bounce back, but when you play your scale, in this case I'm playing a G blues, and it's going to play a G minor pentatonic scale. I'm just going to go through the fingerings. And it may seem like not that important to do, but what a big difference this started to have on my playing. So the first thing you want to think that this is going to do to help is you will have your different rhythmic subdivisions. So you can practice your eighth notes quarter notes, triplets, and sixteenths. But just familiarizing yourself with the scale that you probably already know. Right, just going through the scale finger. Seems, it didn't strike me as the first thing to do that over a track before I want to play through it. So first of all, it's a great warm-up. And as you play the scale, you want to try to play as musically as possible when you're doing it. That's another element that I found to be really important. So I'm not just, you guys watch a lot, you've heard me talk about the same thing. I'm not just banging out the scale. I'm thinking, how can I play this musically over the top? So I know it's going to make a little echo, but... So, but just by playing the scale, you're just working on the groove, maybe playing that nice and softly, swinging your eighth notes, sitting into the groove of the track while practicing the scale. So you're getting the warm-up, you're familiarizing yourself with the scale, and you're locking into this track that you might decide to solo over next. And in doing this, you're introducing, say if we do triplets, so, 1, 2, 3... 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Right? Or sixteenth note triplets, but you're da 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 da. So I'm starting to feel how those feel against the rhythm. So when I'm soloing, I've already kind of introduced that rhythmic subdivision into my playing, right? So if you know how to play it, it's going to start to come out when you practice. So playing scales over anything that you're going to do is really, really important. So if we pick, say, a background track that's twice the tempo, our rhythmic subdivisions that we can play comfortably are going to be very different, right? So you guys have probably noticed this, and I think I've said this a lot. When you're jamming, you want to get into something. Sometimes it's not the greatest idea to pick a really fast background track. Something's going like boom, tap, boom, boom, bap, boom, boom, and you're thinking, I got to play really quickly over that. But when you practice different subdivisions over different tempos, you start to find things that you can do within that tempo that are more comfortable, right? So you're not always feeling like, I got to play all really fast notes. But here, if I'm playing a slow tempo like this, and if I start to lock in some of those different subdivisions, I found it really was a great thing to work on. So that's one of the first ones I would definitely recommend. I do this over any tune. If I'm changing keys, and I'm going to try to make the key change as well, but I'm just going to play the scale. Now, if I am going to do something like where I'm trying to change keys, or if I'm playing a blues and I want to cover all of the same stuff, right? I would make sure I try to do everything in one position. So say if I want to go from G major pentatonic to C major pentatonic, just choosing this. So I would practice it like here. Right, so I would maybe play over the chord changes, and if the chord changes required that change between G major scale or G major pentatonic to C major pentatonic, I would try to do it in one position. That's going to enable you to be able to navigate the chord changes or whatever it is you're trying to do without feeling like you're jumping up around. And when you jump around, you play a lick in here, and then if you're thinking the same position up here, you're going to probably play the same stuff. So if you're down here, you're going to probably play something different. So I do this all the time. Anytime I put on a background track, if I'm just warming up, after I do my stretches and things like that, then I'm going to put on the track and just kind of jam with the scale a little bit. Gets me into the groove and warmed up. All right, so that's my first one. Next one, phrasing with space and dynamics. So one thing that's kind of fun, I remember I did that interview with Scott Henderson, if you guys had watched it, and he had said, I'm just thinking about even just taking my hands off of the guitar, like literally just putting my hands down and not playing. So let's do that. Let me know if this bounce back, but I want to talk while I'm playing. So watch. So. So it's a cool exercise. Just take your hands off. Okay, I'm gonna come in now again. So literally, the act of taking your hands off of the instrument when you're trying to improvise makes you hopefully think about breathing, because if you think about a horn player, you're just going to stop. I know they can do circular breathing, but you're just stopping. There's Bo. Stopping playing. And I know when I watch videos back of me live, I think I'm taking a lot of space. Yeah, I'm really, and I listen back and I was like, wow, I never stopped playing. And sometimes I just never take my hand off the guitar, right? So often, if I'm loud, I'm taking my hand off the guitar, I'm going to roll back my volume or something, turn it off, or, you know what I mean? Like on a gig, I'm never going to take my hands off the guitar and have that ring out because it's going to feed back and everything. But what I mean is I'll turn my volume down or just stop playing entirely. But taking your hands off of the guitar is a fun thing to start to work in as you're practicing, and it forces you to think about space more and making shorter, complete sentences. So that's kind of a great thing. You take a slow blues, especially like this one, just play that, if I smoked, think about that. Oftentimes, when you listen to see someone like B.B. King or Freddie King in those live recordings, Albert King, he'll play a lick, and then after he plays the lick, he'll say something, right? Like, yeah. So, so what I mean? Look at that top. That's what I'm saying. What do you guys think, right? So that's where a lot of those guys would say something in between. They're taking a break. So if you can imagine, I'm not really a singer, but I'll often think about that. Like, what would B.B. King do there? He might tell a quick, funny line, or he goes like, yeah, that's what I'm talking about, or something like that. And it's this built-in break that's really great sounding. And if you work with a singer, oftentimes they'll pick up on it, which is cool. So I will work on that. And these are creative ways to work on your phrasing. Right, Albert King, woo, right, exactly. Yeah, that's what I'm looking for, woo, yeah. So that works great because you're building in just the idea of taking a break. All right, so then it's the dynamics. And I talk about this all the time. But these are things, a lot of things I've spoken about before, but I always need to be reminded of them. That's the thing. I have to sometimes write a note. Don't play. I've done that on my pedal board. Stop playing. Like, so I looked at it on a gig. Stop playing. Oh wow. Okay. Yeah. I'm overplaying probably. All right. So the dynamics. The thing here is you want to practice being completely ridiculous with your dynamics. I'm going to be at full volume. Right? So I am thinking, how loud can I play? How softly can I play? Can I be completely ridiculous with it, right? And when I say completely ridiculous, you start to, once you get control over your hands to play that softly, and it starts to become part of your playing, in practicing it, and when I say in the ridiculous sense, like I'm going to play it as soft as I can. If you're at really like at a gig volume or somewhere close, that soft at this bedroom volume sort of thing isn't as soft as it would, obviously, if you're louder. You have much more room for those dynamics. So in practicing them so softly, especially in a band situation or kind of louder, in the proper environment, if you're playing the soft, slow blues, if you're playing something really loud and boisterous, it's not going to work. But if you're playing a blues and you can start to really make it as quiet as possible, that's the coolest thing in the world. But the first thing is to be aware of it, right? I need to be aware that I can play this softly. And the second thing, for sure, is if you don't practice it, you won't have it. Dynamics like that doesn't come just because you're thinking about it, right? You have to physically sit there and go, okay. Yeah, and it also comes down to your guitar tone. If it's super distorted, that's not going to work because it's very compressed. And if you roll back your volume, you pick softly, you're not going to get the dynamics. So right now, I'm just running into the Marshall, and I've got a King of Tone on the floor. And just, that's as much gain. Kind of rocking, but right, so that's a lot of fun. Okay. Right, so. So I'm thinking about that as I'm playing. How soft can I play? How loudly can I play? And also I'm going to be in time. So if I take my scale idea, just running the pentatonic scale. So da ba 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 ba. Choose a note to accentuate. That's my downbeat. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and all more natural. So here a little bit of track. Here we go. Not using my volume knob or anything right now. So sometimes even that ridiculous thing can sound really cool. I love practicing that stuff. So BB just chimed in here for a second and said, it's important to have a relaxed right hand and left hand. Yeah. And so it's a great point. And to get that, you have to practice it. If you don't practice it, it ain't going to come out. It's just the truth about anything like that. And dynamics is one of those really interesting things. If you're playing it with a band, it's an awesome thing to practice with the band. Where if you got a bunch of tunes, and you say, okay, guys, let's bring it down as soft and quiet as we possibly can. Because you want to practice. Because sometimes if the drummer doesn't have it together or the bass player, it's never going to sound good. So it's something you can work on your own, which you have to physically, and then you also have to work on it with the band. And I would always try to practice those soft sections. Now, the guys I play with, we don't really rehearse at all, pretty much. So, but they're all really good and professional. If I say, like, if I do this, and everybody brings it way down and they get it. And, I'd always play with great guys. I think the time that I really fully got it when I was playing with Robin, and then he brought it down maybe with the band more than I had ever done with the band, and it was just the right group of guys, and it was a really great learning experience, of course, touring with them. And at one point we're playing and I'm soloing, and I'm like, damn, this sounds amazing. You know what I mean? Because the band was so dynamic. But so as a result, that was I thought I always played dynamically. And you realize there's other levels of it too, depending on who you're playing with. So the guys I play with, of course, are super dynamic. That was coming from me because I didn't direct them enough to bring it down even as low as I thought it could go, S.E. Nesbitt, the quiet stuff really makes people lean in and listen, for sure. So it's the dynamics that, to me, that makes great music. But as I said, you have to practice them. So you have to practice physically, plucking harder and then playing softer. And that was all from my hands. And I've mentioned this before, when Robin Ford plays, he doesn't turn his volume knob at all. Doesn't touch it unless it's in between songs, then he turns it off. Turns it back up on full. So he's on full volume when he's soloing or when he's playing all the time. And that was a big surprise to me. Whereas I do that, but I ride my volume knob a lot more too. So the volume knob is a huge component of this as well. Being able to just kind of go in and out and work that volume to get the dynamics. And the volume is sort of important too. You want to be loud enough that you can play dynamically. If you're playing super, super tiny, like super low, below TV volume, it's hard to practice dynamics. So you want it to be loud enough. And I think I've talked about this before. My amp is fairly loud on stage, but I'm very rarely playing at full volume. I just like the headroom because the more room I have, the headroom, the more I can be dynamic with it. Okay? So that's something you can practice at home. Really kind of fun. I know it went a long time on that, but that's fun. I could do that forever. Okay, next up, melodic sequencing. You could do simple melodic patterns that are repeated through the scale. So if I'm thinking about a pentatonic scale, you could do the old, that thing. I do hammer-ons and pull-offs. Make your life easier. You do it over the track. Now, of course, you're never going to do that live or when you're performing, but by working through these melodic sequenced ideas, you're working on your technique, but those little melodic patterns work. Now, I'm never going to go diddle 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 diddle, because then it loses its charm. But if you've worked through them in the different pentatonic scale fingerings, some of them are way more difficult than others, as you can well know. Like fingering number 4, because you got to change that position. There's a lot of pinky and all that kind of stuff. But eventually, these little melodic sequences start to find their way into your playing. So, at the top again. I'll throw one in here, so. Wasn't that great? So watch. Right? So just that little diddle 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 down, as a listener, the audience really likes repeated patterns or repeated licks. Patterns, people like patterns. We try to see patterns in things. It's like when people look at a rock formation and cloud formation, it looks like a dog or something. We same thing with musical patterns. We really latch onto them. And what it gives us something to fill out some time. We can think about where we're going next. Sometimes those things are a little easier to play more quickly because we've worked through them. But what it also gets you to do is to understand how the fingerboard works, because you're working through the guitar to find that melodic pattern. So if you're talking about a major scale one, say something like thirds. while. Okay, now in the real life, I've worked on that a lot. I don't work on that stuff as much as I used to because I don't find it as useful as I used to, if that makes sense. So I will try to work through a melodic pattern that I'm going to end up using, something that I like. I'm not saying you shouldn't practice that major scale and thirds. I've done that a lot. So I kind of have a good feel of it. I'll practice that just for technique, but I'm pretty comfortable with that one. So I'll maybe work on something that I'm not quite as familiar with. So going through these melodic patterns also just get me to know where those notes are intuitively on the guitar. And if you're looking at melodic patterns, you see like somebody has them tabbed out, try not to read them. Try to learn what the pattern is. Booby dooby dooby. Booby wooby dooby booby. Dooba 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 dooba. Like, try to sound it out as opposed to looking at a tab going, okay, it's going up like this, and you just realize the scale is moving in thirds. Or the first one, I'm going down 4 notes up to the second to last one. But, after a while, you don't want to start thinking of it that way. You want to just hear it. And so experimenting with those really helps you to start to hear it. So melodic sequencing is great. And it's also cool because if you're working on a solo, you can make simpler melodic sequencing. And so I talked about this on my major scale course that came out. It's going to play a little phrase, So it wasn't exactly the same phrase to the scale, right? It wasn't repeated in octaves, but so I'm starting to repeat that melodic phrase and sequence it through different parts of the scale. So though the notes might not be the same exact pattern, if you know what I mean, I'm not going through it sequentially. I'm taking the same grouping of notes or the melodic pattern and playing it through a different segment of the scale and a different position on the neck. So the connecting thing there is that pattern and the rhythm. I could do reverse. So taking these little phrases. Right, so they're kind of doing the reverse of that, or the inverse, or demutation. I forget what the word is. Those little things to practice, start finding them when you're playing. I found that to be really, really, really helpful. All right, we'll get to questions in a minute. Slow practice for fast results. How many times do I forget this stupid thing? Like, man, I'm having a hard time playing this lick. Well, just slow it down and just keep on playing it slowly and start to speed it up. Now, one thing that people, I think we leave out of that, here's my juice bottle, is to think about, that's a great time to start looking at your technique as well. What is the problem? Why am I having a hard time playing that lick fast? One, maybe it's just I'm not used to it under my fingers. I'm pushing my technique. Or maybe I'm just picking it like an idiot. You know what I mean? Like it's just a terrible way to pick this, or the fingering's bad, or is that where they play it? Because it's really difficult across those 3 strings. Maybe if I do it here, I can play it across 2 strings and play the same lick much easier. So that's something that taking it slowly and analyzing a lick and building it up was also really helpful. And then many times I found I had things that the issue of the speed was, yes, I needed to practice it slowly and bring up the tempo, but also I was just making it more difficult than it needed to be, or I was adding in more adding in more picking than needed to be. Oftentimes it's hammer-ons and pull-offs that are gonna speed us up a bit. Okay, and the last thing I would say that was really helpful is play over one chord and just experiment. My last course, the major scale course, I call it the art of unlocking the major scale, right? That's what that whole course is about. I just have that G drone and I experiment with playing over the top of everything, right? So if I just take something like that, let me get my track up here, and just jam over it. Where is that? Sorry, guys. Got lots of tracks. Oh, by the way, YouTube freebies, all this stuff's in there too. Let me grab that. Sorry. Yeah. Hold on. Sorry. This is bad planning. Where's that one chord? Okay. Yeah, this is an A minor one chord. This is in there too. So, like, you know. I took a little melodic idea. And took it through the pentatonic scale. So the idea of just, like I said, that major scale course is just really about experimenting. Put on one chord and don't have any expectations from yourself of, I need to play the greatest solo. We're practicing, I say this all the time, we're practicing, we're not performing, we're practicing. So if you mess up, I was gonna use the F word, if you mess up, who cares? Doesn't matter. You're practicing. Nobody's listening. That's the point. You're allowing yourself to just freely explore within the scale. Set your parameters. I'm just going to play the pentatonic scale, A minor pentatonic or A Dorian. Choose the thing you want to work on, try to adhere to that, and start to experiment within that scale. And there's all sorts of ways you can do that. You could do one string at a time, two strings at a time. I'm not going to use a pick. I'm only going to use my thumb. I'm not going to play any faster notes. I'm not going to play one blues lick. And definitely practicing things up one string at a time or two strings at a time really prohibits you from playing blues licks. And for me, this was a huge, huge thing in developing my own style of pulling away from blues licks, understanding the fingerboard, and having the freedom to move around the guitar as opposed to thinking these block things. So picking one chord, there's no chord changes you want to worry about. This is one jam. Pick a scale that fits. And see what you can do. But set a parameter maybe. Top three strings. That's all I'm going to use in the first position. Great. So you start to experiment. Okay, I'm going to take that same idea and move it to the next position. So when I have my Connecting Pentatonic Scale course, which is on sale for 50% off, I talk about that as well. Going through the scale sequentially, one string, two strings at a time, groupings, how we connect them. These things are super important to do. And if you sit down and do it on one chord, without any other goal other than to experiment with these things, that's when I made really big steps. All right, so hopefully these are cool ideas for you guys. These are things that I've worked on and that have done really well by me. All right, this video is sponsored by kombucha. I know, I should get a kombucha one. Kombucha's sponsorship. Now this new OS, everything opens up big. It's really kind of annoying. You know, when you update and you're like, wow, this isn't what it usually does. Do you have any questions? I'm looking for if there were any here. Thanks for being here, Daniel. Thanks for being here. Hey, Amanda, what's going on? Essie Nesbitt, of course. Phil Jones, as always. Mike Forrest, nice to be getting here. Cool, thanks so much. NGSW alumni in the house. Wow. What model PRS is this? It is the DGT semi-hollow limited edition thingy. And I really like it. All right, no questions? No questions. All right, what are we going to talk about? All right, so we have a question, if any. This goes for everything. Chords, right? Play through, well, I'll add another thing. Go online or find a jazz standard, say like Autumn Leaves, something really common, famous jazz tune, and learn the chords. And if it might take you an hour to get through the chord chart, A minor 7, D9, G major 7, C major 7, F sharp minor 7 flat 5, B7 be altered, E minor 7, right? Same chords as Parisian Walkways, or Still Got the Blues by Gary Moore, or the chorus of Hello by Lionel Richie. Then the bridge. Because that's a situation where you're not going to come across those chords too much in rock and roll, but you're going to come across them a lot in jazz, and you're going to come across them in blues sometimes. But running through a classic chord chart is a great idea. Like I said, if you're playing regular old rock, you're not going to come across minor 7 flat 5 all that much. It's definitely in tunes, but in jazz tunes, it's all over the place. And in jazzy blues tunes, it's all over the place as well. Gary Moore got sued for that one. He did? I didn't know he got sued for that. That's pretty funny. It was Parisian Walkways as well, right? It is Autumn Leaves, yeah. It is Autumn Leaves. Do you ever practice scales over jam tracks that make you sound scaly when you play a solo? Okay. Do you ever worry about practicing scales over jam tracks will make you sound scaly when you play a solo? Sure. But remember, the practicing the scales over it, for me, is it's a bit more like getting, like I said, the rhythmic subdivisions of things together, being able to get your technique, and when you want to play something faster or a little more scaly, you have it under your fingers. But yeah, you also want to practice, if you're playing over something like Autumn Leaves, you want to practice being able to play those chord changes or solo over them. So it's just one thing to practice. Practicing the scales I found to be a good way to get a few things together, your technique. But that is definitely not a replacement for practicing how to solo over that. One thing I would recommend, and we could add to the list as we're, 10 Years Gone, I was just thinking about that too. Pretty funny. Because he plays F sharp diminished, not F sharp minor 7 flat 5, which is funny. Another thing I could probably put in this list if you want to add to it is write a solo. So if you're doing a blues, right, or any tune, write a solo. Write a 12-bar blues solo and try to come up with the coolest thing you could possibly write. And then in doing that, some of these ideas, and then perform it. And some of those things that you thought about as opposed to just played because it's something you just play, makes a big difference as well. Because think about my favorite, most of our favorite guitar solos, I would say, there's always exceptions, but a lot of them are going to have been written, or at least they played over the song a lot and then had ideas already. So the myth of like going to a recording studio and then just laying down this perfect solo, it's not like Jimmy hadn't played over that song a bunch of times when they were rehearsing it and writing it. He might have improvised that solo at that moment, but he had played over it many times, right? I talk about David Gilmour a lot. He composes those solos. It's very clear because they're so perfect. So that's what I try to do sometimes, is write a really great guitar solo. Now, when I'm soloing over blues, I'm going to try to more improvise, but I have written solos over blues things, and I've been saying, okay, I'm going to try to incorporate an A7 arpeggio on the A blues onto one chord. So I'll write something that does that. So I've given myself a goal. And that's really helpful too. Listen to yourself back is really important. So if you're thinking like, oh, I'm sounding pretty scaly, just listen to yourself back and you're like, oh boy, yeah, I am. Or maybe you're not, recording yourself. What approach do you use for breaking out a seventh arpeggio sounding like you're practicing an exercise? Okay, that's a good question. So when I'm practicing the arpeggio, I will practice the arpeggio up and down so I can get the technique together, right? So I can sit there and play, A7. And have it down smoothly to D7, E7, D. Hey. Obviously, I've played that a bajillion times. So then the next thing I'd think of is I'm going to play the arpeggio, but I'm only going to play it on 3 strings. Right? And then I'm going to maybe go my 4 chord to the 1. my 5, 4 to the 1. So I limited to what I could do to 3 strings as opposed to the whole arpeggio. So you're not going to go, right? You're not going to run through that, but my 5 chord, 4, there's D7, A7. Four chord. To the 1. Now my 5. To the 4. To the 1. So those are all arpeggios, but by limiting the string sets, I don't sound like I'm playing arpeggios, right? I'm also looking for other things there, like what are my closest notes? How am I going to lead guide tones between the two of those chords? And I wasn't playing fast. I could limit what rhythmic subdivisions I decide to take. But the coolest one for me was to just cut down the arpeggios from big, full 6-string arpeggios to 2 or 3-string ideas. That made a big difference, for sure. Composing a solo helps you break out of muscle memory, for sure. Absolutely. It's Phil Jones. Quite often, if I keep on playing over the same backing track, the solo sort of writes itself, for sure. So I will do that. Play over a song repeatedly, and I go back and work over my tunes as well, because sometimes I'll come up with something new. I'll be really bored of what I've been playing over in one of my songs for a while, or hopefully I've just gotten better. I'm like, well, I could dig deeper into that chord progression, and that actually happened on one of my tunes in the solo section recently. This tune called "I'm Tired." And I wrote some really cool chord changes. It kind of struck me. I'm like, I'm not really addressing all of those chords. Why am I not doing that? Because I hadn't worked on it in a while. I just kind of took it for granted. And I'm just really bored with the same thing I was playing over it. So I looped it, sat down, started to go through the arpeggios, maybe positions, started to work through it, composing some ideas. So when I go on a gig, I'm maybe not fully improvising. I mean, yeah, you're improvising, but you're starting off with like, oh, I've got some ideas. So I'm not just hoping for inspiration. That's also like when you hear somebody, if you're playing over a tune a lot, you end up playing very similar solos. Have you guys noticed that? You're playing over something, you're like, yeah, kind of like the solo I always play, but maybe a little different. Because you're going to find things that work really nicely to get you in or out of the solo. But it's nice to work on trying not to do those at home. So when you go on a gig, or not a gig or anything like that, people don't always say gigs. Whenever you go to play, you have some new ideas under your finger. So composing some ideas, composing even short licks or ideas are great. Often with that, you can think about ways to get in and out of a solo. How do I want to get into the solo? This is a great intro. I'm going to play that every time. How am I going to get out of this solo? All right, I'm going to make sure I have an exit strategy or an exit lick or two. That sounds really good. So those are things that you can do as well. And that comes from composing the solo. All right. Not a lot of questions today. I've just been so thorough in what I'm discussing, or everybody's fallen asleep. I'm not sure. So fun story. I went to my friend Pat Bergeson plays with Peter Frampton, and they were playing in New York a few months ago, but I was on the road, and they were playing out in New Jersey, so he gave me I was supposed to go. The gay gave me a call to go see him play. I've known this guy Pat Ferguson since 1994. We discovered, we figured that out, and his amp blew up, and he said, "Do you know any amp techs in the area?" And nobody can get to his amp. So I said, "You want to just borrow one of my amps?" He didn't. I don't know why he didn't have a backup. It was Peter Frampton. I gave him endless amounts of grief for that. So I let him borrow one of my amps, and he's got it on the road. He's got my Friedman, which is cool. And I got a chance to meet Peter and talk to him for a few minutes, who was the nicest guy in the world. Just cool. Like when you meet someone and it took some real time talking to me, and just is as nice as you would hoped he would be, which is the coolest thing when you meet someone like that and you're like, wow. So I fanboyed out for a minute and said, like, I got to just say that I've been listening to you pretty much my whole life. And it's nice when someone turns out to be even cooler than you had hoped, right? The show was great. He's got some that degenerative muscular disease, which stinks, but he still played really, really well, which was really nice to hear. I saw his guitar. I took some pictures. Please don't post. There's text that don't post any pictures, please. I'm like, all right. So I saw the Phoenix, the black one. He's got sevens on it. He's playing lighter gauge because of the hands. Couldn't tell. He still sounded great. His voice sounded amazing. And so, yeah, that was a lot of fun. Good fun catching up with my friend. And the band was amazing. So Dean York, hey, thanks, man. Yeah, can you tell us about your VIP group? Yes, I have the Inner Circle, which there's a link to. And what BB could put in there. And what the Inner Circle is, you get everything that's in my channel. So you get all the master classes. You get, you're already enrolled immediately in any master class. And any new courses you have, they come out. You get those immediately. And I meet with everybody twice a month, the second Wednesday evening and the last Sunday of the month. And what we do is do a mini lesson and then answer. It's kind of like an open counseling. So any questions you have, it's a great bunch of guys. And that's just a monthly subscription. And people dig it. And I really enjoy it because it really attaches me to everybody in a face-to-face as much as we can on Zoom. And then you can watch it anytime you want later. It's been great. The guys are really cool, a lot of great questions, and help sort through some stuff in courses. Yeah, so since I'm not teaching privately, it's a great way if you want to get some face one-on-one time. You could play something, the guys will all talk about it. It's been a lot of fun, and it's growing, and I'm really enjoying it. So that's the Inner Circle that BB just put right there. And I'll put it in the links below as well. Thanks, Dean. Dean's in there. Thanks for bringing that up for me again. I appreciate that. I'm not always my greatest salesman. Kurt Schaffenberg, maybe listen to singers for triads and phrasing. Sinatra and Crosby are pretty good at stuff like that. No, singers are terrible. No, of course. Listen to other instruments. I'm a guitar nerd. I do listen to other instruments for sure. Yeah. Sax players sometimes. Piano players. Yeah, guitar players, the instrument lends itself to playing a certain way. So listening to people who do not play guitar and people who need to breathe in between phrases, like singers, is a really good thing to do. I was listening to, it was a live stream on Instagram. There's a piano player, you guys might be familiar with him, Larry Goldings, who plays with, a lot of people, but Larry Goldings, just check him out. And hysterical and amazing. And he was just at this thing where he was just streaming him playing. And I was so inspired by it. I was like, wow, the piano. And what he did, it's interesting that he did this really great melodic sequencing thing, but with chords. I started working on it. I'm not going to do it right now because I haven't had a chance to follow through, but I was like, wow, I've never done that. That's such a piano thing to do, and I've never done that. So I was kind of working through, it was inspired me. I'm glad this whole thing made me think to get back to that. Just watching him play, though there's certain things you could do. I'm like, well, you just can't do that on a guitar. Playing two lines in octaves, you can't do that unless you're, Stanley Jordan or something like that. So it was just inspired by listening to him play. And I'm like, I'm going to try to work out whatever that is as best as I possibly can. So other instruments are really important to listen to as well. I find like even like violinists, I love listening to classical music with the dynamics that you can get from that instrument, which I think is, I don't know, next to guitar, my violin is probably one of my favorite instruments. I just love the sound of it when played well. If you've ever heard someone learning how to play a violin, that is not a pleasant sound because the intonation is really tough. And the thing about a violin is like, if you don't vibrato that note, it can sound just like it's a really kind of horrible sound. So, all right. So I want to talk about, let me just talk about the gear for a second. That's always fun. I'm experimenting with my King of Tone, which I never really use, and I'm loving this little Marshall, and this guitar. But that's the King of Tone. Without running clean, pushing it a little hard. And then both sides. It's a great sounding pedal. Now, while I was just noodling there, think about this. When you're practicing, what to practice? Practice everything. Practice your vibrato. So you want to have complete control over the vibrato. That's the first thing I did. No vibrato. And add it in a little bit. Maybe speed it up. Sorry. Right? So being able to have control over that, I practiced the heck out of the vibrato, and I still do. And those are the things I find go the quickest if you haven't been practicing. Sometimes my time is the first to go. Sometimes my vibrato, I'm like, oh, it's not as good because I'm maybe a little out of practice. But anything you want to think about, I really spend a lot of time focusing in on. Nick Orr, do you have any thoughts on pickup heights for humbuckers? I kind of do, because I've been messing around with them a lot, and I talked to Ron Ellis not that long ago, like 2 days ago, actually. So humbuckers you can have closer than single coils, generally speaking. So certainly I try to level out the volume. There's kind of a sweeter spot in the middle where I kind of base everything off of the neck pickup. Let me start it that way. So the neck pickup is not really that high. It's hard to see. It's a little higher in this than, say, my Les Paul right now. I don't measure them in terms of a pickup height. People sitting there like, is it 3 inches or 3/4 of an inch? Not 3/4 of an inch, but you know what I mean. 8/16 or something. I never look at it that way. I kind of just do it by ear and eye. And then the closer you have the pickup, the louder it's going to be. But sometimes I've found it can be a bit strident, so you can need to start to back it off a little bit. With Strats, they're really, it definitely depends on the magnet strength, as Death Magneto probably just said, for sure. So most of the pickups I play are kind of PAF medium, not to lower output. I don't really like high output humbuckers because I just don't think they sound good for what I play. So, I think PRS is great. If you talk about them specifically out of the factory, they do a really nice job. But I still end up tweaking it a little bit because I do lower my action. So that's one thing to think about. If you've lowered your action, you may want to lower the pickup. Fenders or single coils live in, and my friend Steve Blucher over at DiMarzio has been very helpful with this. I'm kind of quoting him, that single coils, like there's a certain spot where they just work. And if you go too close... Okay, one thing, if you have a single coil pickup too high and you're playing a note, you can tell because a lot of times the note will oscillate. You hear like blah, 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 because it's making it's causing oscillation. The magnet and this vibration of the string are kind of fighting each other. So that's the first thing. If your guitar is making some weird noise, like wow, 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 like the pitch seems to be kind of moving or something like that. So I would, you want to lower it a little bit. If you find everything is very anemic sounding, then you want to raise it up a little bit. So strats live in a certain spot, like it's pretty set, I would say. I do angle my singles a little bit, so a little lower, a little higher on the treble side, a little lower on the bass side. Now with the PF ones, I kind of have them. This is kind of fairly high, but because the magnet's not that strong. Now Ron was talking about adjusting pole pieces a lot, bringing them up and bringing them back down. I've been messing with that a little bit. One thing I have to say though, a big difference is playing it at volume. So if I'm experimenting with it at home at a low volume and then I turn up loud, it's a very different experience. So try to adjust them as close to the way you're going to normally use them. You know what I mean? Because it's really, it does make a difference. Volume can make a huge difference. The attack of the string, the way you're pushing your amp. So I would do it at volume, whatever that volume is. It doesn't have to be super loud, but just loud enough. Because sometimes those transients, those really on top of the notes. So also if I feel like everything's really kind of sharp on the transient, like very on front of the note, you know what I mean? Like really picky, I will try lowering the string a little bit. And that just happened with one of the PRSs I have. Like I lowered the action. I was like, why does this sound so attacky? And I was like, oh, I didn't lower the pickup. So I lowered the pickup a little bit, and that attacky sort of sound went away, which is really cool. That was really instructive. And I called up Ron Ellis, and I was like, hey, man, pickup height makes a big difference. He's like, yeah, it does. Yeah. Okay, so Beaver saying the King of Tone was made for particular guitar player, JW. Was never marketed as the signature pedal, right? Jim Reeder, right? I experiment with, this is Nick, or with the pickup height all the time. You lose low output PF style pickups. You prefer high action and more neck relief than most. I prefer like a poker straight neck. Like the neck on my guitars are super straight. And I would say my action, that's all relative, is medium lower. My friend Matt at 30th Street Guitars, he'll give me a guitar back that he set up, and it's so low. He's like, yeah, I got the action super low. I was like, I can't play this thing. But my friend came over and he's like, man, how can you play these guitars with the action this low? So, and other friends come over and go, wow, this plays perfectly. So I can't say, I never measure it. I just do it by feel. The first thing I notice when I need a neck adjustment is when the neck is not perfectly straight. When it's a little more relief, I can really feel it, and I don't care for that. But that's great how everybody's got their own feel with these things. So I don't also pick really hard. That's part of it. Do you still have your other DGT? Yes, I do. Yeah, they're all great. This thing just came my way, and I played it, and I thought it was amazingly special sounding. I did some trading into it, and we talked about it. And this guitar is kind of taken over, along with my Tuttle, as like the two main guitars at this point. I mean, I got other stuff I love, absolutely, of course, like the old stuff. But man, these two have just really kind of great. And I've talked about why I like the DGT model so much. Is it feels like a Strat situation hand-wise with the tremolo and the volume and all this kind of stuff. So I like that. So when I pick it up, I'm very comfortable going from this to my Stratocaster. Whereas when I go from my Strat to a Les Paul, which I love Les Pauls and Gibsons, everything's just kind of in the wrong spot for me. And since the tremolo is a big part of my playing, there's that, but it's also just where the volume knob is. Now, on my other DGT, I'm going to do probably the same to this one, is David's got it set, so this is the neck volume, and that's the bridge volume. I'm just going to make two tones and one volume, so I prefer that, because I found sometimes on gigs, I'm like messing that up. So I think a master volume on this will work well. You lose the mixture of the two pickup volumes, but that's worth it for me to not mess up turning down or upper volume for the wrong pickup. So, Orchard Park Band, Thomas Moore. How do you practice for a gig? That's a good question. I make a set list, and hopefully I'll have a playlist in iTunes or whatever it's called, Apple Music. And first thing I'll do if it's new material, I will just listen, right? Just listen to the songs. And so you start to get them in your head. I'll have them in my phone, walking the dogs or whatever, and just play them. So I've got them together. I find it's kind of hard to memorize songs while you're looking at charts or if you're trying to write them out or learn them. So just listen to them first, and you get an idea what the song does. Then, depending, like for my band, I have charts for everything. And I do that on purpose because a bunch of reasons. It's mainly self-serving because I want to make sure that if they mess up, and I mean this with love, that I can say, no, it's on the chart. Like, you know what I mean? And so there's that. Also, it makes their life much easier because some of my tunes are a little more intricate. And it's a lot to ask for somebody. You know, we're all pros. We don't really rehearse if I'm playing the bitter end. And we do it every once in a while just to kind of get some stuff together because I trust them. But if they have the chart in front of them, like, oh, great, Jeff wrote out everything. This is so much easier for me to do. And if they choose to write their own chart after the fact, then that's great. But I know if there's a line that I want them to play exactly, that they didn't figure it out wrong or something like that. And form, too, is really important. So the form is clearly stated on there. And once I wrote really good charts, well, I should say, hired my friend to make really great charts because he's really good at it. You know, so I hired my friend to do it because he's better at it than I am. And I just email them to everyone and they have them on their iPad. And then it solved so many issues that were on gigs of forms. The main thing was having charts prepared. I don't love guys having charts on stage, but I'm not going to be a big pain in the butt about it simply because, you know, they play so many gigs. If I'm on the road and we're playing a bunch of steady gigs, there's really no charts after a little bit. But, you know, if you're doing a one-off and you're introducing some new material, I'm not going to, it's just part of the gig, you know. I would prefer it not, but, you know, it doesn't bug me anymore because we're all working musicians and it's kind of accepted. Definitely practice standing up, in your practice sequence. That's the next thing I was going to say. So as I learned the tunes, kind of played along, figured them out, and then run through the set standing up. Run through the set. If there's, you know, pedal board changes or effects, practice all of that. Because sometimes you might be like, ooh, that's way too much of a, you know, foot dance to get those pedals on and off in time. If you don't have like a switching system or anything like that, that will be really important because you're like, oh, I need to turn this on and that off. And you're like, oh, they're right over here on the other sides of the pedal board. So practicing some of the motions of changing, practicing standing up is because it's a whole different experience. And you're going to be playing live. You're going to be standing up when you're playing live. So practice standing up. Then you get the height of the guitar right, which is really important. And I talked about this in one of my gig disaster videos. You know, if you really think about, you know, think about what you're going to wear on the gig too. That's important because if you decide to wear this really cool jacket you got, and then it's getting stuck up in your bridge or something, or then, you know, you can't wear it. So those are things that you often sometimes sadly find out on a gig. So practice it standing up. And then I just run it as much as I can. I'm playing the bitter end on the 30th of this month. Got invited to do a Jeff Beck tribute, or be part of a Jeff Beck tribute with Ben Butler, who plays with Sting, Oz Noy, Teddy Kumpel. The bass player I don't play with Richard Hammond. Aaron Comas is the drummer of the Spin Doctors. And Daniel Manceris, who plays keyboards with St. Vincent for a long time and a lot of other people. So that's going to be a ton of fun. So, yeah, I'm going to practice all those tunes standing up. And it's only 3 tunes. And I'm just going to practice the crap out of them. Yeah, because the biggest thing about practicing being successful on the gig is having the muscle memory and having it memorized. If you're worried about the song, you're more likely to mess up. So if you really know the material well, and you can do it standing up, along with the recording with your pedal board and things like that, that really takes away a lot of performance anxiety because you just have the stuff together. You've played it a million times. So run the set. So before I went on the road with Robin, we had a big set. It's a while ago, but I just ran it every day, a few times a day, right? Until I got to the point. And then it was really funny. Got on the rehearsal and Robin's like, damn, you like, I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to not know the material. You know what I mean? You never know, no one, being unprepared. First of all, it's the most unprofessional thing you can be is not know the material. And I don't want to do that because I want to play my best. And I can't play my best if I'm looking at charts, which he didn't want, of course, or if I'm worried if I don't know it. Then I'm going to be second guessing everything. And I'm not in the music. I'm thinking about the music as opposed to playing the music. Can you talk about how to set drive pedals, gain level, and etc.? We could do that in another one. It's a whole other thing. But basically, I just set largely first. I'm just going to set. That's the drive pedal. I just set where I would maybe have this amp if I were to not use a pedal on it. Just a breakup. Need a little less overdrive. And if I roll back my volume, kind of my clean tone. And then when I hit the boost, kind of your lead tone. So it's gain staging. So the first one is just kind of how, if I have an overdrive pedal on, I'm treating it like an overdriven amplifier, edge of breakup, or whatever you want to call it. I've done a bunch of videos in that, but that's really experimenting, but definitely live. I've even found this at home. I'll set my pedals to where I think I like them at home, and they got on a gig and they're too distorted when you get live, because when you're playing live, all these other things start to happen. The amp's working the way you want it to. You're getting that kind of the circuit of you and the guitar vibrating, working together. And so that's what we're kind of simulating with some overdrive at home. So when you get louder, it's the way it should be. So I inevitably end up turning the drive down on my pedals. All right, cool. So, yeah, that's good for today. Let's just run through just real fast. It's on the screen here, but I definitely want to talk about it. Practice scales over the backing track. Huge, and fun. Practice, what I mean by that too is practice rhythmic subdivisions. Quarter notes, triplets, eighth notes, sixteenths. Really, really important. Next one, phrasing with space and dynamics. The space thing, I was just saying, take your hand off of the guitar. Just try to play something short, a sentence. And once again, you're practicing, you're not performing. So if you make mistakes or some of these ideas aren't connecting, or it's fine, you're practicing. The dynamics thing, as you watch back in the video, if you can, just practice playing as soft as you can and as loud as you can. Practice over a backing track that allows you to do this. If you're playing over like a heavy, metal kind of background track, it's hard to be dynamic. If you're playing over something like a slow blues, it's really kind of fun. Well, something I didn't mention with that is listen to live recordings. If Frampton comes alive, just think about that now. Do you feel like we do? They bring it way down, and he brings it up. Same kind of thing. There's a lot of dynamics going on in that, especially live performances. Melodic sequencing. Take a pattern and take it to your scale. Work through that. Through your scale fingerings. Take a melodic pattern, repeat it. Not even say necessarily verbatim, but close as you go through it. And these are really great connecting ideas. When you're practicing your melodic sequencing through a scale, like doing all your pentatonic scales with the same melodic sequence, remember that you're practicing that just to get the sequence under your fingers and to get the technique together. You're not necessarily going to be going for a whole solo. Just you end up going to start, some of it's going to work its way into your playing. And it gets you to know how to work through the fingerboard. Practice slow for fast results. Once again, I found most of the time that I've had a problem with the lick, it was more of a technical issue. I was maybe not prepared to play it that quickly. But since I've got okay technique at this point, it's usually more of I haven't been practicing enough, or I'm picking it wrong. I'm doing something mechanically that is slowing me down, or it hits a real weakness in my technique. So what can I do to work around that or to fix it? So taking your time and analyzing it, more often than not, it's a technical issue of the synchronization between the left and the right hand. or just a bad fingering. Play over one chord and explore an emotion, right? Just play over one chord vamp, and take an idea and just kind of roll with it. With no expectation other than I am experimenting and having fun on the guitar. And that's a weird thing to practice for many people. Like, it's funny, just the anecdote for that is my latest course, that major scale, Unlocking the Major Scale. I got a lot of really nice feedback from people like, wow, this is a great course, and I've never thought about practicing scales this way. This is really cool, and wow, this is really inspiring. Then I got an email from a guy who loves all my courses. He's like, can I get my money back in this one? I thought it was really underwhelming. So I found, and it's fine, courses are different for other people. But for me, I think the idea, practicing being creative is a difficult thing for a lot of people. Like it's a mindset. So when you're just playing over this one chord and practicing trying to be creative and explore, a lot of people, and it's just a mental way of, I need something to practice. No, what am I doing? Am I doing thirds? I've encountered a lot of students like that. They needed something really concrete. And I'm like, yeah, the concrete is experiment and try to find out who you are. Like, I can't teach you that, just use an A Dorian scale and see what you come up with, and maybe play 3 notes per string and then isolate this little grouping and see what happens. And that to me was when music started to happen. I started to discover a bit of my own voice. I stopped thinking about scales as much. I just started thinking about the guitar. I started thinking about music. I didn't play as many licks because I was purposely trying not to play licks, or I limited the amount of strings that I could play on. Those things made a big, big difference. And it separated me, or started to, I think, from being a lick guy. Like, the blues can be kind of, I don't say it's easy, but it's easy to get to a certain point because you could just play a lot of licks. The people we love are the guys who invented those licks or have their own sort of ones. So the experimenting thing and setting some parameters, limitations, and trying to stick with them really helped me break out of cliches and bad habits, and got me to be much more of a player than a guy who's just piecing together ideas. All right, cool. So once again, I've got my Arpeggios Unlocked ebook, which is totally for free for you guys. How to go through all your arpeggios, all your 7th arpeggios, major 7, minor 7, dominant 7, minor 7, minor 7, flat 5, and diminished 7, how to work through them. It's a mini course and ebook. That's yours for free. 50% off the Mastering Pentatonic Connections, which would work in really well with what we're talking about today. And the Inner Circle, which, of course, if you guys are interested in checking that out, that would be awesome. I got a video coming out this weekend, and I've got a new course in the works. I've already started filming some of it, and it is a course on diving deep into playing on a few minor blues tunes. So I'm going to start it off as, here's a bit simpler. We're going to make it a little more difficult. Then we're going to talk about some stuff to make it that next level. So it's not going to be too basic, like here's a pentatonic scale. I think we've covered that a lot. But, Dorian scales, adding in maybe a melodic minor scale, checking out different kind of chord progressions like St. James Infirmary. So common blues tunes that get called, but not just your standard ones. Take the standard one, then we add up some more stuff to it's going to be fun. I'm really enjoying filming it and talking about the stuff. So I haven't done anything like this course, so I'm super psyched about that as well. And hopefully that will be out, depending how fast I can do my editing, Friday. That's the goal on that one. So, all right, everyone, I really appreciate you being here, and I will see you probably in 2 weeks, and unless I have something really dire to talk to you guys about next week. Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks, BV, and thanks to everybody always as being here. I really appreciate it. And thank you for helping me get to 50,000. If you've not subscribed to my channel, please do so, as it does really help with the algorithm. All right, everybody, thanks so much. I'll see you next time.